again, thanks for joining me for another edition of Terry Examining Stained Glass from the Burrell Collection. This young lady you're looking at here is Princess Cecily. She's pretty famous. Her grandparents were, if I just check, Richard the Duke of York and Cecily Neville. So she was named after her maternal grandparent. Her actual parents were Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville. We'll have a look at her. I'll tell you a wee bit about the history of her. There's some drama involved in it, as well as some things that I read about that totally surprised me. I'm not a great history buff, but I'm learning more all the time. So I hope you enjoy this. Have a little look at it. We'll go through this. The stained glass panel in the Burrell Collection is a rare survivor from the royal window of Canterbury Cathedral. It shows Cecily as a young girl, aged around 13 or 14, just before the tragedy of her brother's disappearance. Those were the famous princes in the tower. I'll tell you more about those. It's one of the few contemporary portraits that we have of her, capturing her with long golden hair and a pearl-studded coronet. Princess Cecily of York was born in 1469. She was far more than just a figure in a window. She was a political survivor. She lived through the most turbulent years of the Wars of the Roses. While her sister Elizabeth of York became the first Tudor queen, Cecily's life was defined by dramatic shifts in status, from the royal princess to a declared bastard and back again. She was a royal favourite at one time. As the third daughter of King Edward IV, she was born into immense luxury. At age 5 years of age, she was betrothed to the future King James IV of Scotland and was even styled Princess of Scots for a time. Her world collapsed in 1483 when her father died. Her brothers, who would become the princes in the tower, vanished, and her uncle Richard III declared her parents' marriage invalid. Cecily, her mother and her sisters, in a consequence of that, spent months in sanctuary at Westminster Abbey, fearing for their lives. But after the Tudor transition, when Henry Tudor, Henry VII, defeated Richard III in 1485, Cecily's fortunes changed. Because she was the next eldest sister to the new queen, she became a vital part of the Tudor court. She was given the high honour of carrying the royal heir, Prince Arthur, to his christening in 1486. Henry VII married her off to his own half-uncle, John Wells. This was a calculated move to keep her close to the throne, but ensure she was married to a man loyal to the new Tudor dynasty. But things were soon to change. After Cecily's first husband died in 1499, Cecily did something shocking for a royal woman. She chose her next husband all by herself. Between 1502 and 1504, at some point, she secretly married Thomas Kyme, a low-ranking squire from Lincolnshire. King Henry VII was furious that a princess of the blood had married so far beneath her station without his permission. He banished her from court and confiscated her lands. She spent her final years in relative obscurity, possibly on the Isle of Wight or in Hertfordshire, away from the glittering royal life she was born into. She died at the age of only 38. So what about the princes in the tower, I hear you ask? It's one of the most enduring mysteries involving power, betrayal, and a potential royal murder that has been debated for over 500 years. The princes were Edward V, who was aged 12, and his brother Richard, Duke of York, who was aged 9. After their father, King Edward IV, died suddenly in April 1483, the young Edward V was set to become king. His uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was appointed Lord Protector to look after the boys. Richard moved the boys to the Tower of London, which at the time was a royal palace as well as a fortress, supposedly to prepare for Edward's coronation. In a shock move, Richard then declared the boys illegitimate, claiming their father's marriage was invalid. Richard took the throne for himself as Richard III. The boys were seen playing in the Tower Gardens less and less, until by the autumn of 1483 they vanished completely. So who were the suspects? For centuries the standard story, one immortalised by William Shakespeare, was that Richard III ordered the boys to be smothered in their beds so they could never challenge his right to be king. As long as they were alive, they were a focal point for rebellions. There was no smoking gun, but Richard's failure to ever show the boys alive to squash rumours of their death is considered highly suspicious by many historians. While Richard is the prime suspect, others had motives to see the boys gone. Henry VII, that's Henry Tudor, when he defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth, he needed to secure his own claim. Some suggest he found the boys alive and had them killed to prevent a Yorkist uprising. The Duke of Buckingham is also being considered as a culprit, Richard's right-hand man, who eventually rebelled against him. Some believe he killed the boys to either help Richard or to frame him and seize power himself. But in a rather sad end to the story, we have the skeletons being found. In 1674, workmen at the Tower of London dug up a wooden chest. It contained the skeletons of 2 children beneath a staircase. King Charles II, believing these were the princes, had them reburied in Westminster Abbey. And to this day the Church of England has refused requests to DNA test the remains, so their identity remains unconfirmed. But what do you think? It does sound like it's them. So that's our story. An interesting life, not without its problems, but that's the way it is, I think, in royalty most of the time. You do not have a life of their own, and in days gone by it was worse for them. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll come back for another session of interpretation of some of the stained glass material from the famous Burrell Collection in Glasgow. Thanks very much for spending time with me, and I hope to see you again. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this, and share it with anybody else who's into history of this kind.